There's no going back.
I'm going to start off with my 6B because we're working in the eye area. I need quite a lot of detail. Now if you have a look in the eye area, let's have a look on the tablet. The first thing we're going to look for is our darks and lights. That when it comes to drawing, your darks and lights are the only thing that you've got to describe the landscape of the face. So we're going to look for our darkest areas here in the eyeball and across the top of the eye, and that's where we're going to start, just to start laying down some color. Now if you remember correctly, on the gradient drawing exercise that we were doing a few days ago, I was discussing the gradients of paper, the size of the tooth and the different pencils, etc. when we were discussing how to get a smooth, even skin tone. The paper that I'm working on now today is the Ashrad, one of the examples that I used. It's a medium tooth piece of paper, so what I've done, because I like a fine tooth, or at least a medium tooth, but preferably a fine tooth. But what I've done is I've turned the paper over and I'm working on the back of it, because the back of the paper is ever so slightly finer than the front of the paper. You'll also notice that I'm varying my pencil strokes. Right, so I've just got the basics of the eye in. I want to concentrate on the eye a little bit later, but the eye is going to, I like working with the eyes. I love the eyes, so I tend to start with the eye and finish with the eye. But I'll come back to the eye a little bit later. I don't want to do too much to it. I want to now concentrate on the skin tone. Now when we were discussing the even tones the other day, if you remember correctly, we discussed the difference between backwards and forwards and little fine circles, if you remember. Now what I'm going to do now will probably end up being a combination of the two, but because of the fact that I'm working on the facial smoothness, I've reverted to my 8B. It's softer and I want a slightly blunter tip. So even though I sharpened my pencil earlier on, I'm going to go ahead and just blunt it a little bit. And what I'm trying to do, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but I'm trying to create a little, almost a little 45-degree angle at the tip of the pencil. That way, if I work with it with that flat down, I can get a blunt mark, and if I turn it around to the other side, I can get a sharp mark. Right. So let's draw. A lot of the students tend to be a little bit frightened of going too dark too soon. Now while that is true in painting, it's not always true of drawing, and you can be a little bit afraid of almost being committed to the drawing. So if I can encourage you, one thing I'd like to encourage you not to be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of getting down too much graphite. It is true that it can't really be lifted very well, but if you're frightened of committing to graphite, you're going to end up with a fairly uneven and almost wishy-washy finish. You want nice contrast. When we're doing drawing, it's working in black and white, so the contrast between the blacks and the whites is what's going to give us the landscape. So don't be afraid of creating that. It's going to take practice as well. So if you do find that you're going too dark in areas where you shouldn't be, practice is what's going to get it right, not being afraid to commit. I've got a very light touch at this stage because this is quite a medium tone. It is true that artists find it easier to draw older people that have got more wrinkles as such. There's more landscape in the face to draw. When you're drawing a young person's face, it can be rather difficult because there's very little landscape, and to get these smooth, unbroken tones is quite a challenge. There's one thing I can really not overemphasize enough with drawing is patience. I've noticed it all too often that a lack of patience actually creates an inferior end result. When I say inferior, I mean maybe with a bit of patience you could have done a lot better. There is a tendency for people to want to smudge with their fingers when they're doing graphite work. Now, that's fine when you're doing charcoal work. Charcoal works beautifully, or pastel work even. Smudging does really well with those things, but with graphite it's just not the same. Graphite, or what we refer to as pencil lead, tends to go a really dirty color, dirty grey color. It's not good quality art practice.
That's what you want to do.